Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday night live stream, Dynasty Heat Seekers. I'm your host today, Bryce. Fortunately for Rick, but unfortunately for us, he is in Vegas for the draft. So he will be back eventually, but more news to come because this show will be moving times next week. Just want to remind everyone, we'll probably be moving it back to 8 p.m. But as you can see, we're joined today by always Leone, and then a special guest, one of the OGs, Rob Sullivan. Sully, how are we doing today?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me on. I don't really do anything all day now, so this is pretty fun for me. When the fastest growing fantasy website gives you a call and says, hey, come on the show, you say yes. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Leone, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. Sully, it's good to have you back here.
Thanks, brother.
Are you is this your first return since taking a little vacation? Is this your first public appearance?
Yeah, I unofficially retired, I guess, about 2 months ago, and I've literally done shit that entire time, other than a little bit of professional work and stuff like that. But this is the first thing of any fantasy relevance at all. So I'll see if I could shake the rust off, and we'll have a little fun.
Yeah, I'm honored to have you here. This is great.
Yeah, we got to take you got to take a break from all that hard work you were doing. So it was well.
I appreciate all that, but this is still the best place to be. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the NFL draft looming this Thursday, we decided to go over teams that are more likely to probably select an offensive skill position player, because obviously that's what matters when it comes to dynasty football. What does it do to their value? Maybe who do we think goes there, and things like that. So today is a bunch of hypotheticals and just opinions. It's the draft is going to be crazy. We think we all can agree that we have no clue exactly who's going to go where. But these are some teams that have needs that need addressed when it comes to quarterback and wide receiver, especially in this first round. Maybe we get to some running backs potentially going in the second round or the first, which we'll touch on later. So we'll just go ahead and jump right in. And so one of the first teams to go early in this draft, I think they have 2 picks in the first 7. Yes, correct. 5 and 7 is the Giants. So Leone, tell us what are the Giants' needs, and maybe what are some guys that they could be looking at those 2 picks?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that the Giants are going to stick with Daniel Jones at quarterback, but as we've seen the past few years, he hasn't really been as good as I think they thought he would be. So is this an opportunity for them to take a quarterback and maybe have him compete with a new rookie? I think it's possible. They have pick 5 and 7, so maybe with their 5th pick or 7th pick, they do that. Otherwise, with Barkley at running back, I don't see them taking a running back that early. The wide receivers, it's not the best, but it's also not the worst. Kadarius Toney showed well. They still have Sterling Shepard. And they have someone else on their depth chart that's not coming to mind that I know that I saw earlier. If you guys can maybe help me out with that real quick.
Receiver wise,
you say Kenny Galladay?
Galladay, Toney.
Galladay. That's who. Galladay. So so he was new there last year. Didn't have a great season, but I mean he's still a good athlete. So I don't really see them addressing wide receiver early in the draft, nor running back, or obviously tight end. So I think it's possible they take a quarterback, but I still wouldn't think that they do that. Sally, what do you think?
I think they don't take a quarterback, and if they did, I think it would be at 7, not at 5. I think the Giants are they're a mess. They're one of the teams that have kind of holes up and down their lineup. I think the problem being, and it is for a lot of these quarterback needy teams, is this quarterback class isn't really that great. So are we really sure that the guy you're bringing in through the draft is better than the guy you already have now? It's nothing worse than drafting a quarterback at 5 or 7, and Daniel Jones beats him out for the job. So right. I think that sucks. And plus, Giant fans remember taking Daniel Jones at 6 when they had a second first-round pick that year, later in the draft, when if they were going to take him, they should have taken him there. I think they need help on the O-line, and there's plenty of quality offensive linemen that early in the draft, and I think they need some help on the edge on defense. So I think that's where they go. And then maybe if there's somebody kicking around 2nd, 3rd round, if they're on the clock, then maybe they look at quarterback then. But I think you're right. I think they stay away from running back. There's no need to do that, and wide receiver as well. I think there's enough talent and depth there, and tight end's a hodgepodge there. But I think they go plug in other holes. Bryce, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the Giants have gone, fantasy relevance now the past 3 years, right? I mean, Saquon, Daniel Jones, and now Kadarius Toney, I think are the last 3 years, their first round pick. The only way I see him going any skill position player here is if for some reason the trade rumors for Kadarius Toney are true, which I don't think they were. I think they were real loose. Like maybe they were just listening to offers, but I don't think they were actively searching a trade. So unless he gets shipped off somewhere, I think they got to go O-line or defense, because that was two major needs for that team. They have the weapons offensively and the skill position players, so it seems unnecessary to address it early in this draft where quarterback is not great and wide receivers stacked, but they have the talent already there. So
and Bryce, since we briefly mentioned quarterbacks in this draft class, normally for my Superflex rookie rankings, I almost exclusively have, quarterbacks at the top of my rankings.
Right.
But in this draft class, I can't do it. I mean, I just can't. There's so many good skill position players, even in the Superflex league. I'm hesitant to, stick quarterbacks at the top. And so I don't know if you guys kind of think the same thing, or, what would get you to change your opinion? Like, is there a team, and I know maybe we're going to go off the script a little bit here, but is there a team that takes a quarterback in the first round that would jump them to like a 101 in a Superflex league?
101. I don't know. I was going to actually touch on this later, so you did go a little off script on me. But I think if Pittsburgh drafted a quarterback, I really like the weapons and the coaching there. That would, to me, be a place where, okay, this is a great situation. This dude, especially if you're hurting at quarterback, I could definitely see you drafting either Willis or Pickett, because I think Pickett's underrated in fantasy right now. Anyway, the small hands stuff has got to be overlooked. But
let's let that simmer. Let's just we'll tease that.
We'll get back to it. But that's a team. That's the only team. That's really the only team that I think that they potentially jump higher up in my rankings.
For real.
Okay, so we'll move on to a team that's actually, and let me go back a little bit in the sense of I personally looked at a lot of mock drafts when I came up with this list. So you're seeing we're not going in the draft order 1, 2, 3. I'm just skipping to teams that I think, and analysts for ESPN, NFL, and things like that had in their mock drafts of players, wide receivers, or quarterbacks going to these locations. And the Panthers at number 6 was the next one. I think we can all agree that they're more than likely to take QB, obviously, than any other skill position player here. So I see mostly Willis and Pickett landing at this spot. So Sully, what are your thoughts on the Panthers at 6? Do they take a quarterback? If so, what is the value there for you?
I don't think they want to take a quarterback, to be totally honest with you. I think they would love nothing more than to trade out of this pick and down, because they gave up, I believe it was a second and a third for Sam Darnold. So I don't think they pick again until like 100 and something in this draft. So ideally for them, they have the worst offensive line in football. So I think ideally for them, they grab an offensive lineman. If Ikuwanu could fall to them, he's an NC State guy, so it would kind of be logical to take the homegrown kid. But they might balk and take a quarterback. I think it would be an early reach. Everything that I've read and everything that I feel is that if they did go quarterback, it would be Kenny Pickett over Malik Willis. Pickett personally is my number 1 quarterback in this draft. To Anthony's point in the Superflex rankings, I have him 6th. So that tells you what I think about the quarterbacks. I think Carolina goes offensive line here. Anthony, what do you think they do at 6?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, when I always think back to a situation like this, it's the Seattle Seahawks before they turned into a dynasty. What was that, like 10, 12 years ago now? But they got quarterback last. And they even used a 3rd-round pick in Russell Wilson. But they got their offensive line built, their defense built. And then right when they got their quarterback, it's like, boom, ready to go.
That's
true. So I just think that that's a formula that I think a lot of NFL teams want to do. And I think we've seen time and time again, teams take quarterbacks before they're ready to go to that next level, and then they struggle. And then it seems like it's just kind of like this wasted process. And it's like then you have to like restart the rebuild all over again. So I agree with you, Sully. I do not think they go quarterback. If they did go quarterback, would that move Pickett up your ranking? I have a hard time thinking it would move my rankings at all, even if a quarterback went that early. If you're a team, a super flex league, I don't know. I just don't know if it's going to really move the needle in that sense.
I'd move him down, to be totally honest, if Carolina took him, because it would remind me of David Carr in Houston. 2 steps back, sack. Like, that offensive line is god awful, and I don't care who they put behind there. God would struggle on that to play quarterback for Carolina this year if they don't replace anybody on that offensive line.
And that's something else, and that's another good point that you bring up. And that is, if these quarterbacks kind of get like put into like these bad spots, don't waste your first round draft pick on them now. Wait till they have a couple of bad seasons. You'll be able, it's like Daniel Jones, for example. You can get Daniel Jones so much cheaper now, than what he was going for when he was drafted in the league. Same with most of these guys. So yeah, I agree with that logic as well.
You're a lot nicer than I remember you being.
We just started, so we'll see.
That's fair. That's fair.
I personally think that the Panthers, I think it's 50-50 that they take a quarterback here. And I only say that because I think Matt Rule is desperate to get the guy he wants. I think he sees that it's not going to be Sam Darnold at this point. I don't know how he could see anything else. It definitely wasn't Cam Newton when he came in and tried to rejuvenate his career.
Nope.
I think that he at this point could be put on the hot seat during the season. I haven't really looked much into it, but he's had 2 pretty disappointing seasons in a row, and injury has plagued that team. So he's got the excuses built in. But if they stay healthy all year and they suck, like, he could very well get fired. So if he wants, he could easily draft a quarterback at this 6th spot and feel comfortable sitting him. Because if he sits them, 10 weeks and they're like 4-6, 5-5, and he's like, you know what? We need to turn things around. Let's put this fresh young quarterback in there. And he even has just the littlest spark. It gets fans excited, and it might keep them for another season. So that's the only thing I think that the Panthers potentially take a quarterback for that. But I do think they're likely to take offensive line and or trade back if not. But it wouldn't be surprised me if that's where we see the first fantasy skill position player. And again, I do think it's Pickett. I agree with you, Sully. And his value doesn't change for me. I think he's a late first and super flex dynasty, fall into early second. And a lot of mock drafts.
Does Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis do anything for DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, CMC? Does he do anything for any of you guys? Is that an upgrade?
I think he hurts. I think it hurts CMC when you put a mobile quarterback back there, right? Because non-mobile quarterback, like, Darnold's somewhat mobile, but he's more inclined to check down rather than tuck and run like a young, inexperienced quarterback will do. So I think it does hurt. CMC. It's time to sell CMC anyway, in my opinion. But I'm not sure what it does to DJ Moore. It can't hurt Robbie Anderson because he was horrible last year. So
true.
Leone, did you have any other thoughts?
No, I agree with you guys. I don't have any different opinion on that.
Okay. Just a couple of picks later, we have the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Atlanta is hurting all over on offense. All they have is Kyle Pitts, Marcus Mariota at this point. And who knows if Mariota is, equipped to be a starting quarterback. He's been a backup, to a pretty good Derek Carr. So they could either take wide receiver or quarterback. And I'll go ahead and start with this one. I think wide receiver is more likely for them. And the reason why is Mariota might be pretty decent. And if he is, and he has a good wide receiver in this spot, they got a good wide receiver. They'll have Kyle Pitts. And then if Mariota's decent, they might have an okay season. They're probably still picking in the top half of next year. But the offense looks a lot better than it did last year. And then you potentially come into the next year with that young, promising wide receiver, Calvin Ridley, and then Kyle Pitts. I don't know if Calvin Ridley stays with Atlanta. I'm not sure what goes on there, but that's a potential. And that seems like a pretty scary receiving core if you look at it like that. So I think they take wide receiver over quarterback. I think it's really, really likely that they take wide receiver here. And I'm not sure what it does to the value of this wide receiver. I think if it's one of the top 5 guys that I have, from Burks, Olave, Wilson, London, and Williams. I think it kind of just stays the same because that guy immediately comes on that team is the number one wide receiver, and he's going to be on the field for every snap. And he's going to probably see a decent amount of targets. If he lands there, he might see the most targets out of any wide receiver in this rookie class. So in targets equal fantasy production. So that's what I'm thinking. And we had someone even say, do you think Falcons take Garrett Wilson? And I think that's very, very possible. I think these top 4 to 5 guys can be all ranked pretty similarly. I wouldn't be surprised if they get taken in any specific order. So Sully, what are your thoughts on the Falcons potentially taking a wide receiver or a quarterback?
I think they take Garrett Wilson at 8. I know that there's been a lot of linking. The owner has expressed desire for Malik Willis, who is an Atlanta kid. So I could see potentially Atlanta going with Malik Willis, which I believe is way too early, but nonetheless, I could see them doing that and then circling back with, I think they pick around 48 and 54. They have picks. I could see them, this is perceived to be a deeper wide receiver class. So perhaps they go that way, but I think the pick to make at this spot is Garrett Wilson. He's not my number one wide receiver, but I think that he's probably the first wide receiver to come off the board, according to NFL scouts. So that's what I think they do. And I think that's part of me. I think that's what they should do. Anthony, how about you?
Yeah, I think that's a good call. And I think for fantasy purposes, we're not going to see a lot of players move up rankings. I think what's going to happen instead is players are going to just go down if they get drafted to a bad spot or a perceived bad spot. So, for example, if the Jets decide to take a wide receiver, let's say it's Burks. A lot of people have Burks, like I have him at the top of the draft class or right after Bryce Hall, for example. If he went to the Jets, I would move him down, certainly below running back, probably a couple other wide receivers. So I don't think we're going to have a lot of players moving up these, rankings. I think we're just going to have a lot of guys moving down after they go to an unfavorable spot.
Would you move Garrett Wilson down if he goes to Atlanta? Sorry, Bryce.
No, I was going to say the same thing.
I don't think I'd move him down. But
isn't he
it's not
isn't he
an
150,
ideal
60 target guy there?
It's not an ideal situation given, their quarterback, Marcus Mariota. I mean, it's not ideal. So I wouldn't move him up. I don't think he would probably move very far in my rankings if he did go down.
How many, what percentage of passes do you think Mariota will complete this year?
Boy, I don't know. I don't think it'd be that high.
55?
Yeah, I mean
57?
Maybe 58. I mean, maybe. I mean, if he can stay healthy.
If Wilson sees 150 targets, 87 catches.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I think he's in a really good spot there is kind of the point I'm trying to make is who the hell else are they going to throw the football to other than Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, I look at it like you do, Sully, in the sense of he does get like volume immediately. Whoever lands there is getting volume, right?
100%.
And Leone's counterpoint, I think, also is that quarterback is we haven't seen him play in a while, and they're going to draw a number one corner, right? Unless they for some reason are putting the number one corner on Pitts. We don't know how these rookies come out and do against NFL caliber number one corners. So if he does get that 55 to 57 overall, I think it's going to be lower to whoever the number one wide receiver is there. So I see both sides, but I like whoever lands there. I think their value stays the same for me. It probably doesn't go down for sure, just for that same reason. So
I think it's fair.
Yeah,
I think so too.
If there's a guy that immediately get drafted and excel, it wouldn't. I mean, Wilson is kind of that guy for me, but he's also kind of that guy that I think would, if he immediately gets drafted and he's a bust, it also wouldn't really surprise me, if that makes sense. Like, I think he's
high ceiling, low floor kind of guy.
I think so. Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to the next team. Just the next pick. These early teams have a lot of need for quarterback and wide receiver. Seattle at number 9. Obviously, they have Drew Lock as their best quarterback right now. So it is a major need. Who knows if they address it this year or even later in the draft, but we have to talk about it. So quarterback for Seattle at number 9, Leone. What are your thoughts on that pick? What do you think?
I see them addressing it later in the draft.
Okay.
I don't see them using an early pick. I don't think they really see themselves as much of a contender this season anyway, with how good the NFC West is anyway. So I think they're going to take a similar approach to how they rebuilt their dynasty last time, which was build a really good defense, offensive line, get a really good team built around their future quarterback, and then make the move for their quarterback when the time is right. I don't see them spending early draft capital to bring in a quarterback, especially with how unexciting this draft class is. Sully?
Great, 100%. I think Sauce Gardner is a guy that they kind of look at. I think they shore up the cornerback position, or Kyle Hamilton or someone along those lines that helps them on defense. Because there's, again, these teams at the top are at the top for a reason. They're not very good, right? So they have holes all over the place. Seattle picks again at 40 and 41. I still think they pass on quarterback there. I see them taking like Desmond Ridder and with pick 72, something along those lines. Kind of a mobile guy, kind of fits that need. And I think they signed Geno. I think they give Drew Lock a shot. I just think they roll with what they've got and fill other holes. So I don't think Seattle does anything at quarterback that early. Another team I think would love to trade back.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think it's more likely that they don't take quarterback and they take defense here, maybe form a Legion of Boom part 2 that they need, because any quarterback that goes there is going to struggle more than likely. I mean, he's got great targets to throw to, right? Lockett and DK Metcalf. So if he does end up there, I like the value of him. I mean, obviously, I think it's more than likely Malik Willis here, or they just pass, right? So
I agree. And they're gonna run 40 times a game too, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, it surprised me that they kept Pete Carroll. That was kind of shocking. They got rid of Russell Wilson, but decided to keep Pete Carroll. But I think they address everything else. Leone, I think you nailed that one on the head. So the very next pick is 10. I will mention that they do have the 4th pick as well, the New York Jets. It's more than likely that they're taking defense or offensive line there. I can't even remember what they got. A lot of needs, right? But you're seeing a lot of analysts doing mock drafts where they're taking wide receiver here. So Sully, what wide receiver could you see potentially landing here? What does it do to their value? Go ahead.
I think they take Jameson Williams, and I think it's a perfect spot for him because he doesn't need to be the number one guy right away. They still have Elijah Moore. They also have Corey Davis for one more season. And they got a bunch of other stuff like Denzel Mims and Braxton Berrios. So Williams, whether or not he's 100% ready to roll for the start of the season, fine. If not, then it gives him time to just gives him time to ease into it. He's my number one wide receiver. I think if he doesn't tear his ACL in the national championship game, he's the number one wide receiver in this class by a mile. So he still is for me. I think that's a great pick for the Jets at 10. And I have him at 1, so I can't move him up. Anthony?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Drake London could work. I definitely see them taking a wide receiver early in the draft. Maybe not 4, but certainly 10 I think makes a lot of sense. I do think it hurts Elijah Moore's value, as we've seen kind of happen, not a lot, but as we've seen happen to what's the guy in Miami?
Waddle?
Blanking. Waddle, yeah, with Tyreek Hill going there. So, it's kind of, it's like, oh, it's kind of like a buzzkill. It's like, oh, man, he's not going to be just getting everything anymore. So, sorry, Bryce.
That is it's incredible. I'll address it.
I certainly see them taking a wide receiver. Could it be Williams? Sure. Could it be London or, Garrett Wilson? Yeah.
Could be any of them.
Yeah, I think it's a good call.
Yeah, this is like one of those teams that's like, who are they taking at this pick? It's wide receiver, but it could be one of 5 guys. It wouldn't surprise me if it was any of the guys you mentioned. I've seen some. I have Treylon Burks landing there as well. And whoever lands there, they don't immediately have to take over, right? They have Corey Davis there, who I think is best suited as a number 2, but he can like transition that young guy into taking over, and then he, goes back to his role as the number 2 on an offense. I agree that it does hurt Elijah Moore. They'll have 4 decent targets there, like Elijah Moore, Braxton Berrios, Corey Davis, and then whatever rookie wide receiver they take. It gives Zach Wilson plenty of options. I think it helps his value more than anyone. with that selection. And with the Jalen Waddle, I can't let it go. So with the Jalen Waddle thing, I think Tyreek Hill coming there doesn't hurt him at all. Personally, I think he gets a lot of volume, but now no team's number one corner is going to focus Jalen Waddle over Tyreek Hill. So he's going to get better matchups. He's still going to get a lot of volume, and he still has the connection with Tua that's from college. So I think he'll have a better fantasy year than the one he just had. It might not be like astronomical, but he was wide receiver 14, 15. He was up
right
there.
in that range. Range.
He was almost a top 12 guy. I think he lands there and up again this upcoming season. But
okay. I think they both finish as top 12 wide receivers this season.
Yeah, definitely possible. So then we got kind of a little break in teams that are likely to take a skill position player. So we're going from 10, the Jets, all the way to, I kind of have the next one at 15, which is the Eagles. So will this be 3 years in a row they take a wide receiver in round one? I mean, we can probably chalk Jalen Reagor up as a bust, right? Devontae Smith had a pretty good year. He definitely came alive more in the second half of the year. Is he suited to be the number one? If not, does this next guy coming in take over? Or does he still stay the number one and develop, and this guy that comes in, kind of slides in as that number two? What are our thoughts on that? I'll start with, who did I go last time? Did I go Sully last time?
I think so.
Okay,
well,
Leone.
I also want to briefly mention the Vikings, who we skipped over at 12. Sully is wearing the Vikings
That's
hat.
true.
So I saw a couple mocks that have them taking a wide receiver. The mindset was, hey, Thielen's getting up there in age, so maybe they get someone now who could, replace him later. Jameson Williams, like you said, it doesn't need to be like the number one guy now. Could they get someone like that? And so I thought, Sully, since you know the team so well, if you have any thoughts on that? I mean, it seems like something the Vikings would do. So even if you don't think it's the right move, what do you think?
Yeah, I think they'd be batshit crazy to take any offensive player at 12. If anything, trade out of the pick. There's been speculation that perhaps Kansas City wants to come up and they'll give them 29 and 30. You do that all day. If you want to take a wide receiver, take it with the 30th pick. They don't need that position. Their defense is why they were as bad as they were last year. They lost 8 one-score games. They gave up leads in the last 2 minutes of the first half in the fourth quarter, like week after week after week. So the cornerback position is terrible, so go get Derek Stingley Jr. Make me happy for once in my frickin' life and move on. You don't need to take a wide receiver. You've got arguably who I think one of the best wide receivers in the game right now. Adam Thielen's fine. He's still got another year or so left. There's plenty of other draft classes coming, and this is relatively deep, right? Take a wide receiver later on. Take a flyer on someone a little bit later on. If you come on the clock in round 2 and someone like a Christian Watson's on the board, take him. Right? Yeah. Or take Sky Moore, or take somebody like that in the second round if they're available. Don't burn a pick like as valuable as 12 is in a rather shallow draft class. I say you try to trade out of it, and if you can't, then you take the best cornerback or safety available to you at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Washington, though, just to even go back a pick further, I think Washington takes a wide receiver.
Oh, okay.
I think they take Drake London. I think that they've got Terry McLaurin. Mm-hmm. They got Terry McLaurin in a contract year. We're seeing the price of number one wide receivers escalating exponentially in the league. I think it makes teams a little bit more aggressive in the terms of grabbing a wide receiver in round 1 because of that 5th-year option protection that it gives them. And I think Drake London would be a great addition on the opposite side of someone like McLaurin. Carson Wentz is always sort of like bigger body, aggressive wide receivers. So I have London going to Washington at 11, and I think it's a good fit for him, and I think he would do well.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I actually have an arrow because I've put Washington later and drew it up there, but didn't even see it on my own notes.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I think London is definitely likely in that spot. It makes sense, right? They have their fast receivers when it comes to Terry McLaurin. I think they have Curtis Samuel if he is ever healthy, another speedy guy. Drake London's is the perfect fit, big-bodied. Reminds me of Mike Evans. Obviously you can't assume the same production, but the way they look and play are very, very similar on tape. It's kind of creepy. It's perfect. Michael Pittman Jr. right, is a bigger bodied guy, and he had a great year with Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
So I think if Drake London goes in there and Carson Wentz, keeps the job in that on that football team for more than a year, he could definitely be decent this first year, but then really have a solid second year when he gains that chemistry. So I agree that they are very likely to take a wide receiver. Did you have any more thoughts on that, Lenny? Go ahead.
London and Pittman played together at USC as well.
That's right.
And I think Drake London's better than Michael Pittman. So we'll see what happens. It also gives Dyami Brown a chance to maybe ease in there and get some targets without people paying attention to him. Sorry, Anthony, I cut you off.
Well, no, I mean, the more I'm thinking about what we were talking about 20 minutes ago with Garrett Wilson in Atlanta, if he went there, I do now, after we're talking about all these other guys and places, I really do get the argument how he would really benefit and how he would, I could see him be like 2 overall, even in a super flex league if that happens. So, so I think just to circle back after now we're kind of talking through everything, that kind of gels a lot better. Washington, I think Drake London would fit well there. I agree with that call. Vikings, I agree with you. I don't think they will go with a wide receiver, but they could, and I wouldn't be shocked.
I would be pissed, but whatever. But it had been pissing me off my whole life. What's another year? No big deal.
I guess that's true.
it just wouldn't make sense because Sully, mentioned that Thielen's got a couple of years and that division is up for grabs, right? I mean, their wide receiver core is by far right now the best in the division. Pre-draft and even post-draft, it's still going to be miles ahead of whoever's second. They could easily be making the playoffs, and you never know at that point. So they're probably trying to win now. And if your defense is your major concern, I think they draft for concern at that point. So
they have no desire to rebuild, and I can tell you they're not winning anything unless they address their defense. So maybe they do that later in the draft, but I think that's their priority. I'm just looking. They pick at 46 and they pick at 77. Like that's when I would take a look to add. And KJ Osborne's not horrible, so he's a serviceable third wide receiver. And Irv Smith Jr. is coming back, so we have another pass catcher theoretically, and Dalvin Cook can still catch the football. So I don't think you need to add a pass catcher personally.
Right. Good call.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. And now, so back to the Eagles.
What we were talking about.
It was my mistake. I went out of order. And then Leonie corrected me, and then Sully corrected me. So that was good.
There's no correcting you, sir.
Well, you changed my order. Well, I wasn't even going to mention Minnesota, but I definitely meant to mention Washington. So the Eagles at 15, you see in wide receiver a lot. Like, I mean, probably 9 out of 10 mock drafts have them taking a wide receiver here for the third year in a row because Rieger's a wash. They got Smith, who looks pretty solid. Looks like they hit that pick pretty well last year. So what does this next wide receiver come in and do to the values of not only himself but the players around him? Go ahead, Leonie.
Yeah, I think who was the wide receiver before that? It was Arcega-Whiteside.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Arcega-Whiteside.
But he wouldn't have. Was he a first rounder?
No, I think it was. I think it was second.
Early second.
Yeah.
That's
right.
They're on fire.
They're 1 for 3.
I could see them trying to trade Rieger. I could see them taking a wide receiver here. Who would they take? Any one of these guys we're mentioning, Chris Olave, any of these guys we're mentioning, I think would fit fine. I still believe in Devonta Smith. He had an up and down season, but I think he's talented. I think he's going to continue to get better. If you can obtain him in your leagues right now, I think, especially if they draft a wide receiver and everyone's freaking out about Devonta Smith
after the draft,
I think he's a great buy. Yeah, so someone to keep an eye on in your leagues in case they do take a wide receiver, which I think is very possible. Sully?
I guess they could. They've shown that they can, and they will. This is another team where I don't know if they should, but they're a conundrum to me because they have those 2 picks, right? So I don't know what they're doing. I threw together a mock draft today and had them taking defensive lineman. And who the heck is it? Jordan Davis at 15. I think he helps that D-line. They have needs there. And then I had them taking a linebacker after that. But now that I look at it, I can't see them going defense with both those picks. So if they're going offense, kind of has to be a wide receiver, right? It's too early to take a running back, although they do have a need at running back, in my opinion. Quarterback, I think they're going to hitch their wagon to what they have for now. So I guess they take a wide receiver. I don't know who they take though. I guess like if the guys we've talked about it's best available. It's Burks, it's Dotson, it's Watson, it's I don't know, but personally, I think it would have a negative impact on the value of that wide receiver for me. I've never been a really big landing spot guy. I've been more of a draft capital guy. So being picked at 15 would hold that value for me, but I would be worried about that wide receiver in that offense because I agree. I think Devonta Smith had a great year considering he had subpar quarterback play. He came on real nice at the end of the season, and I think he's about to take off. So you're right. He's a buy. I would go get him all day long. I just don't know what the Eagles do, and I don't know if I'd want what they do, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. This is like one of those teams where I really don't want a guy I like to land. I don't really like. I like Jalen Hurts as a fantasy asset. I don't like him as a quarterback for my wide receiver assets. I think Devonta Smith is going to be the number one guy there. I think whoever they draft has the potential, obviously, to surpass him because this is a great wide receiver class. But it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't. So I'm like, it'd be hesitant just because of the other young talent around and the quarterback that I don't really trust as a pocket passer. So yeah, I think they take wide receiver here. It would, I think it's like another like maybe 50-50, 60-40 that they do. And the value for that guy goes down. So like I said, I had those top 5 guys, whoever, if one of them gets selected there, they become number 5 immediately for me. There's not really another team on this list that we're going to talk about that needs wide receiver that lands there and goes down. If any, there's a couple of spots obviously that go up. So, next would be so this next team, the Saints have picked 16 and 19. I think it's very, very, very likely that they go a quarterback or a wide receiver or potentially both with both of these picks. Obviously, Jameson Winston's going to be their quarterback this upcoming season. Michael Thomas is still the number 1 wide receiver. Hopefully, he comes back and is fully healthy and is at least back to 80% of what he was. Because if so, he's still a top 10 wide receiver, fantasy wide, top 5 probably. But they need a number 2 guy in there. That offense lacked explosiveness last year with just Kamara. Jameis Winston was disappointing last year. I think to most people, they remember his years where he had Godwin and Mike Evans and was number 1 quarterback fantasy wise, and then was barely throwing for like 150 yards with the Saints. So, what do you think is more likely, quarterback and wide receiver, and what does it do to their value? Sully, I'll start with you.
I think this is where the first quarterback comes off the board, and I think this is where Malik Willis goes. I don't personally think that's a good pick, but no one cares what I think.
Right.
I think there's a situation there where Malik Willis probably needs a little bit of time to develop and grow. He's probably not a week 1 starter in the NFL. The Saints have a starter in-house, so he can kind of groom and follow him. It wouldn't surprise anyone if Jameis throws 14 picks in his first 8 games and ends up on the bench. Right. New Orleans also doesn't have Sean Payton anymore, so who knows what this offense is going to look like. They also might not have Alvin Kamara for a good chunk of this season based on the incident at the
forgot about that. Yeah.
Whatever game that
was. Vegas.
Pro Bowl.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's so terrible. I don't even know what it's called. But yeah, so Michael Thomas has never had a quality number 2 wide receiver with him. So I think that wide receiver is also an option, but they also lost, help me out. Who's the really good offensive lineman that went to Miami?
Teron Armstead.
Yeah. Right? So I think they need that too. So I think they probably try to go quarterback, offensive lineman with their 2 picks. But what's really, really interesting is they traded with Philadelphia and they traded a bunch to get into pick 16 because Philly had those 3 in a row.
Yeah.
And they traded their 2023 first and a second, I think, for this pick. So they must have big plans for something. So I think it's Malik Willis. I don't know, Anthony. What do you think?
I think it's ironic that I'm in agreement. I'm in agreement that the Saints need a receiver.
It's ironic that you're in agreement.
Quarterback.
You're right.
But what I think is ironic is Taysom Hill is like, hey, I do both of those things. What's up, guys? You know? But yeah, no. So, I mean, I agree with you. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, they want this pick.
Yeah.
They're going to do something with it. I think the fan base would just be like, what are you guys doing if they don't do something with this pick? I think it's going to be a quarterback, and then I do think they're going to address other concerns. Maybe if their wide receiver they like slips to them, they'll take them. Yep. Otherwise, offensive lineman, I think that's a good move, and I think that makes sense for the Saints.
Yeah, I think it's kind of risky that they traded it at 16 because usually you don't see trading up for all that to get like an offensive lineman, right? It's usually quarterback.
Right.
And there's a lot of teams ahead of them that you could very well draft like the top 2 quarterbacks, right? Like Willis and Pickett could be off the board at that point. And then it's like, what do they do at that point? Do they still take quarterback? Do they maybe trade that pick back now and just like, cut your loss? I'm not sure. It's a really weird. Yeah. Go ahead.
Not only that, there's 4 teams that could take the top 4 offensive linemen as well.
Yeah.
So they could lose the top 4 offensive linemen and the top 2 quarterbacks. And then they're sitting there going, anybody like Sam Howell? Like what do you do now?
Yeah. And we wanted this wide receiver.
Yeah.
And this is why I always tell people when they want to trade, they want to trade up in a fantasy draft, just wait till the pick is on the clock. You don't have to do these trades in advance.
Yeah.
If you want to trade up to this spot, just wait till it's on the clock. You see who you're going to get. Then you can actually evaluate what kind of trade you're giving. But to do it in advance, it's I think it's a good analogy because it's really similar. And it's like, you guys don't have to do this yet. Just wait.
Or have an idea of what's going to happen.
Yeah, the Eagles would have accepted this trade on Thursday too. So
easy, right?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
It's not really last year when San Francisco traded up because they knew what was going to be there at 3. Right. They knew who the first 2 picks were.
Right.
New Orleans has no clue what's going to be there at 16. And Anthony, your point before we went on is I wouldn't be surprised if they put 16 and 19 together and try to go up even further. So maybe that was their ammunition. Who knows?
That would be then it would look a lot smarter, I think.
Because Carolina would do that in a heartbeat, right?
Yeah.
Like the Panthers would, and then the Panthers could take a quarterback and an offensive lineman and they'd be good, right?
Or maybe the Jets would do that at 4. Or the Lions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of teams that could definitely.
The Lions. You might even be able to get 2 for 16 and 19. I don't know how those trades work, but 16 and 19 is a lot to give up to move up. So.
Yeah, but you could also get like a future first or a second or something.
Could.
Yeah,
no, for sure.
The Lions would definitely do that, I think, because there's good defensive. They're probably taking an end rusher anyway. They're just taking best available because they have so many holes. So if you get 2 more picks, So I think they take. I think it's possible they take both. The wide receiver value probably stays the same for me. Michael Thomas is going to demand number 1 corner coverage. I don't expect the Saints to be winning a lot of their games, so they're going to be throwing a lot, I think. And whoever that wide receiver is immediately comes in as the number 2. There's not really any tight end taking targets. So they're going to see a decent amount of volume, I think. So next pick is 20, and it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we alluded to this earlier.
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah, we made it. So the Pittsburgh Steelers at 20. Obviously, Big Ben retired. He was terrible the last 2 seasons anyway. But quarterback is a major need for these guys. Obviously, the horrible incident that happened to Dwayne Haskins, I thought he was the best quarterback on that team until, I thought he and Mitch Trubisky aren't really that far apart from each other. But Mitch Trubisky's their quarterback right now, probably going to start week 1, but it wouldn't be surprising for them to get a guy that they don't want to throw into the fire because it doesn't seem like any of these quarterbacks are really NFL ready from what we've seen so far. So who does Pitt take, and what does it do for their value to you, Leone?
Well, I do like what you said earlier. If they went to like Malik Willis and got a quarterback at 20, I don't know if I want to call him 101 in a Superflex league, but man, it'd be tempting. Wouldn't it be tempting to move him up there? I know Sully's shaking his head, but for fantasy purposes, you get that rushing upside.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to be the best quarterback in the world. He's going to get you fantasy points. And so I think in that sense, it'd be tempting. Depending on your team makeup, if you really desperately needed a quarterback, I think that might do it for me. Now, with that said, I wouldn't be giving assets and trading for 101 to get. He's not that type of guy. Don't do that. Right. But if you have the 101 and you need a quarterback and that happened, I can see it. Sully?
Still not 101 material for me. Might move into my top 3. but there's still wide receivers and even Bryce Hall, who I'm not as high on as everybody else is. I still value. I shouldn't say I value them more, but I think the guys that I would play within my leagues would. So I'd rather draft the guy that I think I can trade for the most.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to take that quarterback.
Right.
I don't think the Steelers should make this move either, because I'm not so sure that Malik Willis or anyone else in this draft is better than Mitchell Trubisky. We saw Mitchell Trubisky with Matt Nagy in a dumpster fire of an offense behind a terrible offensive line. By all indications, he made great strides in Buffalo last year in practice with Brian Daboll, to the point where the Giants considered bringing him in, but the Steelers offered him 2 years. The Giants offered him 1. So $10 million for 2 years is pretty good money for like most people would take that, right? So that said, Pittsburgh might be a good spot for Malik Willis for the reasons that I mentioned with New Orleans, is he doesn't necessarily have to start right away. So maybe you let Trubisky start. And if he turns out to be the Chicago version, you have an easy transition. So I could see them doing that. I think Pittsburgh still has a horrible offensive line. That's personally what I think they do. Who did I have them taking? I have them taking Tyler Lindenbaum there. That doesn't mean they're going to do that, but I just think that they should probably address their offensive line, live to fight another day. This is an organization that needs to rebuild. They just don't understand it yet. So I wouldn't do it, but I guess if you do take a young quarterback, that is partially your first step to rebuilding. So Bryce, you still think they should do that?
I don't know. I think Malik Willis has kind of the same. He's getting talked about very similar to like how Lamar Jackson was talked about, right? Where he's a dual threat quarterback, but his throwing mechanics and his accuracy is in question right now. Obviously, he's not as an elite runner as Lamar. We might not ever see one of those again. I think if he lands there, it definitely increases the value of picks 101 to 103, right? Where if you have one of those picks, you probably have several holes, right? And if you are getting like offers from maybe someone that's like a contender that for some reason needs a quarterback, you might be able to cash in on that value, because I think that people are going to get real excited. Like, I feel like any player that lands on the Steelers like always gets really good fantasy value, right? They always draft really good at wide receiver. They draft really good at running back. We haven't seen them have to draft quarterback in a while, but it seems like that offense is always good. So outside of this past year. So yeah, I think it moves them up. I don't know if it moves them up to my 101. I would honestly like Kenny Pickett here better. I think Pitt to Pitt would be a much better fit. I think he's a better quarterback. Like you said, Sully, I have him as my best quarterback in this draft. So if he landed there, I think he's my 102. Man, it's really hard to say 101 or 102, but he's probably my 102. I would say. And
Pickett's local too, right? Didn't he play?
Yeah, he went to Pitt.
Yeah, he went to Pitt, Lanny. If you looked up the colleges that teams went to.
Well done. Good pull, Anthony.
He's like, wow, I remember seeing Pitt on his helmet.
I knew that one. I don't know any other one. I know that one. I got my black and my gold on today, so
you're all set.
You don't know where like Malik Willis went to college?
No idea. Okay. No idea.
Liberty.
Actually, I'm not sure everybody knows that one, because that one's a little obscure. But do you think Trey Lance hurts Malik Willis?
Just because of what happened to Trey Lance? Do you mean?
And now there's even perception out there that perhaps Trey Lance isn't locked into that job even in year 2. So you know what I mean? Like a guy with limited experience in college who has a rushing upside, not the greatest passing mechanics. Although Lance has a cannon for an arm, but do you think people look at it and go?
I don't think Lance specifically does, but I think the last quarterback class does, just in general. I mean,
because even the highly touted class was disappointing.
Who was the best fantasy quarterback last year? Mac Jones. And no one had him in the top, 4 quarterbacks.
And Davis Mills was probably the second best, right?
I took him at 107.
Well,
most 107 last year.
Because he's a Patriot. That's
no, it's because I needed a quarterback and the other 4 were taken.
Exactly, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. No one had him in the top 4. I mean, with exceptions noted, had him in the top 4, and then seeing all these quarterbacks, not just Lance, but Zach Wilson, Fields, Lawrence, and Lance. I think that does more harm. Not specifically Lance, because I don't think Lance really had a fair shake like the other guys we mentioned did.
Yeah, that's fair.
To be another counterpoint to that is, I don't think it's possible for any of these other quarterbacks to really land in a worse spot than the top 4 guys last year did. Like the Jets, the Jaguars. The Niners are good, but he obviously went to a place where he wasn't starting, so we'll exclude him. And then the Bears.
And the Patriots.
The Patriots. I mean, it's not a great spot fantasy wise, but it's a good spot for just to be relevant. Like he was a quarterback too, but
he was he was the absolute perfect quarterback for that system.
He was fine.
He fits.
Like you drafted him from Belichick's best buddy. You knew exactly what he was and who he was going to be, and he did exactly that. So, but Davis Mills was okay for Houston. In fact, Davis Mills would probably be the first quarterback taken if he was in this year's draft class.
And that's the thing.
That tells you where we're at, right?
And I think that hurts the quarterbacks in general. It's just because it's like, why would I waste a first-round pick in the Superflex League on a quarterback 100%. When I can get Davis Mills or Mac Jones in the second, third round of a Superflex League? So,
and if I'm an NFL team and I have a bunch of holes, I'm going to take whatever I can, and I'm going to take Bailey Zappi in the 4th round and hope for the best. Because if he doesn't work out, you just throw him out the trash with the other guys. So,
right. I agree.
Yeah, 100%. Bryce, where are we at? We're off the rails. It's like
well, speaking of Mac Jones, the 21st pick, New England, potentially could take a wide receiver. So I'll start with this one since I'm
great segue. That was awesome. Good job.
Yeah, resident New England fan. I think it's less likely they take a wide receiver here. They definitely should focus defense with this pick, whether it's edge, linebacker, or corner. It's a can't go wrong pick, right? I'm sure they have like a list of guys they like in order, and they're just going to cross them off as they get knocked off, and then whoever's at the top is who they get, right? So if there's a wide receiver up there that's above maybe a cornerback, end, or a linebacker, it could be one of those guys taken. I personally think whoever they take here, the value immediately goes up. For me, obviously as a fan, but the usage is going to be through the roof, right? Kendrick Bourne, who is a decent wide receiver, had a pretty good season, like a career year for New England, but he's not suited to be a team's number one, right? Whoever gets there isn't immediately going to draw number one corners. Kendrick Bourne's still going to do that, so he can kind of segue, gain some chemistry with Mac Jones, and then eventually take over as the number one, because that's what we need, right? But I do think it's unlikely. I think more second round guys like maybe Mechie, Pickens, if they're there, maybe Dotson if he falls. That would be more likely than them taking a wide receiver here. So what are your thoughts on that 21st pick, Sully?
So I'm just looking at what we've talked about, right? So Atlanta, New York, Washington. Who else do we have potentially taking a wide receiver? There's about we're at about 5, right?
Saints, Eagles, Jets.
So we potentially have 6 wide receivers off the board already?
Potentially, yes.
So to me, this is where the Patriots trade back, because isn't Green Bay and Kansas City freaking the hell out right about now if 6 wide receivers are off the board?
Yeah, I would think once three get taken, they're going to try and trade up, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Out of the teams that we have mentioned, there's really like 3 that I really think are going to I think are more likely than any. And that's Atlanta, the Eagles for me, and then the Jets. I think are probably the 3 that are more than likely taking wide receiver. So Green Bay's got the next pick, so they don't have to trade up unless they're trading to 21 and they think New England's supposed to take a wide receiver there. So they're very well could still be like 2 of those top 5 guys there. That 21st pick, okay. I think is likely.
Yeah, I think that you guys have opportunity, more edge rush than anything else. If I remember correctly, watching you guys play last year, your pass rush could have been better. Yeah, you also lost probably arguably the best cover guy in the NFL. So if Kyle Hamilton is there, or if the Vikings don't take my boy Stingley, then maybe he's there. Trent McDuffie is another cornerback that's pretty solid. So I think you guys have a lot of opportunity on the defensive side of the football as well. And a lot of unknown on the offense for you guys, right? Like we don't really know who's calling plays. Matt Patricia is kind of on the offensive side of the ball there now with who was the Giants coach? What was his name?
It was Joe Judge. Is that you're talking about?
Right. So Joe Judge and Patricia apparently are running the offense. So I don't know what that means, but I think
see.
you're okay. I think you're okay at wide receiver, and I think you're another team that can take a swing a little bit later in the draft. So that would be my thought. Anthony, what do you think the Patriots are doing?
Yeah, I kind of agree with everything you guys are saying. I kind of just want to move on to the next team, to be honest. But because I'm really excited for the next team. But no, I agree with you guys. Bryce, you mentioned that if they got a new wide receiver, he'd have to gel with Mac Jones if they eventually become the number one. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go on a too far off track here. I don't see Mac Jones as a starting quarterback in 5 years for the Patriots. I don't know if you disagree with that.
I think Mac Jones is a fantastic real life quarterback and a forever QB 20.
So you think he's like a franchise quarterback for the Patriots? I mean, like 10 years. Let's just call it 10 years.
Potentially,
easy.
For sure.
I think so. Easy.
Okay.
I just don't think he's a fantasy quarterback.
I don't know how much you watched of New England. Like he's not a fantasy quarterback, right? But he makes, and to be fair, I guess excuses, but I mean, look who he was thrown to last year. Like Hunter Henry, Kendrick Bourne, Jacoby Meyer as your top 3 options. That's not good. Like nobody should excel with that.
And he was still the best rookie quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
I don't see him getting franchise quarterback type money. I see him being kind of like the quarterback who keeps going to new teams and like Fitzpatrick, like Dalton of late. A quarterback that's good. And if you're like Garoppolo, he's good. Just like Garoppolo, he's good, but he's not going to be someone you build your franchise around. And he'll get starting jobs around the league. But I don't think he's going to ever get like giant franchise Patriot money. Just my personal opinion.
I think that's a good point. Like I think the Andy Dalton comp is really good. The Fitzpatrick one I don't think is. Fitzpatrick was a 7th round pick. Is just a journeyman guy who caught on. And Jimmy's a good comp. Like Jimmy was Bryce. Where was Jimmy? Late first, early second.
Second round pick.
So and if Garoppolo's not playing behind the greatest quarterback of all time, he's probably the Patriots starter for 10 years, right? Like he would have been perfect in that system.
Probably.
He just didn't get that shot. So who knows, right? We don't know what a team's going to do on Thursday, let alone 10 years from now. But
yeah,
I don't think Mac Jones is an issue for them.
No, I agree.
But
I don't think they're going to go quarterback. And Mac Jones is fine. I think he's
They're not.
He's a good. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's go to the next team. We skipped a team who I think is taking a wide receiver. And I'll make it quick. Me personally.
You're making us go back?
Who?
Yeah, real fast.
Oh.
I think the Chargers take a wide receiver.
Oh, okay.
They made some great moves on defense in the offseason. They got Bryce's boy, and they made a couple other really nice moves. Imagine sliding another guy in there with Williams and Keenan Allen.
What about Palmer?
I think Palmer is going to get more looks this year. He excelled in his very few opportunities last year. That's the only reason that I think that it's unlikely they take. It wouldn't surprise me though. I think it's
that's fair.
You do see it in mocks.
I personally don't like Palmer that much. I see
Canadian. No, he's Canadian too. What are you doing? You're back.
So is Drake. Justin Bieber.
I don't like the guy who lives across the street from me either, Anthony. He's Canadian. No, I just see a guy like Treylon Burks going to the Chargers and just kicking serious ass. So anyway, sorry to take us back.
No, I think it's interesting. I think that I could see how Palmer isn't everything we thought he could be, and
they could take a running back too, but
I think
not at 17.
I think the wide receiver class is deep enough where they don't have to do that so early in the draft, but I think it's a good call. I think it's a good call.
That's fair.
Yeah. Before we move on to the next team, I think Mac Jones' floor is Alex Smith, and then I'm not sure what his ceiling is. So I think that'd be like his bottom comparison.
You think Alex Smith is his floor?
I think so.
Or ceiling?
I think it's his floor.
Oh man, that's a good one. All right, let's write that one down.
I don't want to. No one wants to.
I'm just saying. He's a game manager at worst. We'll see what he can do if he gets better weapons. That's all.
He just can't run like Alex Smith did before.
That's fair, but Alex Smith didn't get to run for very much. His leg got snapped in pieces, didn't it? That's true.
Yeah. Poor bastard.
All right. Yeah. Okay. The Green Bay Packers. The 2022. Green Bay Packers.
22.
Yeah.
Yes, 22.
Green Bay Packers. All right. Obviously, we all know their biggest need, wide receiver. Go ahead, Leone.
Oh, come on. I said earlier, we're not going to see a lot of guys moving up in the draft class. If the Packers take any one of these top 5 wide receivers, they are going to shoot up faster than I can say Green Bay Packers. I mean, it's going to be like 102, 103, whoever it is. It could be any of these guys that we've mentioned before.
They go to 101.
Yeah. I mean, but it could be any of these guys that we mentioned before. Burks. I mean, anyone. I just think that it would be huge for the Packers. It would be monster season for Rodgers again. And yeah, I think this is there's only a couple other things that could go where a guy would shoot up. This is the number one spot where it could just flip guys like crazy. Sully?
I think you're 100% right. And I think the absolute perfect fit for Green Bay is Chris Olave. I think he instantly becomes the number one in any format of fantasy football that anybody can possibly play in a rookie draft. I think he has got the route running. He's got the yak ability. He's got great hands. He's played in cold weather. Like, he's got it all going on for him. And talk about a guy falling into a system and instantly being the number one target on his team. That's what happens to this team. Now, clearly I'm a Vikings fan. I would love absolutely nothing more in life than Green Bay passing on wide receiver for the 150th straight year, but there's no way they can. So if they don't trade up, which I think they might have to get one of these 5 guys that we keep talking about, then they have options, right? They can look at guys like Christian Watson. They can look at guys like Sky Moore, Dotson, guys like that if they're not able to move up. But to me, Chris Olave is the absolute perfect fit for them. I think he's to the moon if he lands there. Bryce?
Yeah, this is obviously the Raiders pick that they got. They have the 28th as well. We could see him double dip. I think it's just worth mentioning. It wouldn't be surprising for him to take 2 wide receivers because their best wide receivers right now are Randall Cobb and Sammy Watkins.
Alan Lazard.
Alan Lazard, Sammy Watkins. Yeah, Randall Cobb.
I don't know if Sammy Watkins makes – honestly, I don't know if Sammy Watkins makes the team.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if any of those guys were – I mean, I guess Lazard. But it wouldn't surprise me if Cobb or –
Aaron Jones is probably their best catcher, right?
Right. So, but I agree. I think Green Bay's 1A for the spot for. I think the first 2 guys, and I'll segue it, I guess. The first 2 guys taken in Superflex dining, like right now, Breece Hall is probably the 101 in most people's eyes, but I think the 101 and the 102 are going to be whoever the Chiefs and Packers take at wide receiver this draft. I can't imagine the Chiefs passing on them. We got one more team to mention before them, or actually 2, I guess. And they're later in the first, so we might see some of those guys out of the top 5 that we have ranked. So we'll discuss later where their ranking goes from there. But I agree completely. If they take one of these top 5 guys, boom, they're number 1 for me. I mean, it's James Williams at the bottom, number 5. He goes to number 1. If I don't need a guy that plays week 1, which I shouldn't, right? I would put James Williams at number 1. Go ahead, Landon.
Yeah, I think also in a 1 quarterback league, especially, Rodgers is a really good buy. He just lost Adams, and it would not surprise me if, they told Rodgers, hey, you come back, we can't afford Adams, but we will draft a quarterback in the first round. And I think that is what got Rodgers to stay in Green Bay. I think he knew Adams wasn't going to be there, and I think he knows they're going to draft a wide receiver in the first round. I'd bet money on it. And that's why I think right now Aaron Rodgers is a great buy if you need a quarterback. He just lost Adams. His value's depressed. I think it's a wise move to get Rodgers in your leagues right now.
Does he become a good sell when they do draft a wide receiver?
Maybe. He very well may be. But I think he's an incredible buy at the moment. Because I'm almost 100% positive they're going to take a wide receiver in the first round. Even though it seemed like it was going to in the past.
They have to, though.
I don't see how Rodgers would have stayed in that building, knowing it's reported he knew Adams wasn't going to be there. I don't see how he would have stayed there, knowing that Adams isn't going to be there, and they're not going to draft a rookie wide receiver in the first round. I don't think it would happen.
He probably gets to pick the player.
I'd be surprised if they don't check with him to say, who do you want?
Yeah.
He probably gave him a list, and they got it. And they're like, all right, well, we got you.
Agree, 100%.
Sign this deal, we got you. Yeah. And if not, he might walk. He might retire. It wouldn't surprise me if they didn't draft a wide receiver. He would retire.
Yeah.
on site.
That'd be so awesome.
During the draft.
So good.
He tweets it out.
Yeah, he hated his draft day, and then his last year he hated the draft day. So.
Hey, he disrupted draft last year, right? That's when this all started. So maybe we get 2 in a row.
All right, so we'll go over the next 2 teams. So Dallas at 24, and I believe Buffalo is at 25. Yeah. So we'll chunk them together since we're running out of time. We're a little bit over, and then we'll talk about the Chiefs. So Dallas, Amari Cooper's gone. Obviously, he took a jab at your quarterback Sully and called he called Dak Prescott the Black Kirk Cousins. So that didn't bode well in the organization. So he got shipped out of there. It's Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb, which seems like a service, a good enough wide receiver core. They could probably use some defense, but Jerry Jones loves his weapons. So wide receiver is definitely possible here for Dallas. What do you guys think? Sully, I'll start with you.
I think they go O-line here. Landon Collins off to Cincinnati. I think they plug that hole to get as much juice out of Zeke as they possibly can. So as much as Jerry probably wants to trade up for Treylon Burks, I don't think they will. I think they go offensive line here. At least they should. Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I just think Jerry Jones is going to, if a wide receiver falls, just like CeeDee Lamb kind of fell when he was drafted, I totally see the Cowboys doing Cowboy things and getting that player. But from a more rational standpoint, I don't think it makes the most sense for them to do that. So, I guess we'll see what happens.
Is there any way Kirk Cousins is the white Dak Prescott? Is there any way that's possible?
I don't see why not.
I don't know. I don't know if we're allowed to say that.
I don't know, but I think they're both equally ignorant and offensive. But
yeah, I mean,
for the record, I retract my statement. I have no comment on this issue.
I don't have a job. Feel free to fire me. It's all good.
Right. I think Dallas has benefited 2 years in a row from guys falling to them. I think last year was more. I think they wanted one of those top corners, whether it was Horn or Surtain. And I think they both got taken surprisingly earlier than they thought. And then Parsons was just there. And then again, like Leone alluded.
What a gift.
Yeah. And then Leone pretty much just mentioned CeeDee Lamb. I think it was the same thing. I don't think that was in their original plans, but it was we can't pass up on it. It's like the Vikings. Jefferson fell in their laps. They almost couldn't believe it. So, and then to Buffalo, this is just kind of an asterisk in this draft. We don't think running back will go first round, but if there's any team to take it, I think it's Buffalo. And immediately I think that gets everybody excited because there's not much competition there. Like Singletary is right. He had a decent little push there at the very end of last season, but they've lacked in that department, and it seems like that's the missing piece in that offense. They got the wide receivers they need. Their tight ends are solid. A running back could really go a long way with there. So just anything else you guys want to mention about Buffalo potentially taking a running back, Leone?
No, I think that's a good call. I think they will take a running back. I'm willing to bet that. I think
the first?
I do think with this pick it would be a running back. I do think that will happen. I think they're gonna. I think it'll be Bryce Hall. I think Sully might maybe think it's someone else, but I'm gonna go down and I'm gonna Leone lock. Packers are taking a wide receiver.
Oh wow! What a lock!
And the Buffalo Bills are taking a running back.
That's a better lock. Okay, I like that. Bold prediction. Bold prediction.
I didn't. Well, no, they weren't bold. The first one wasn't bold. The second one is a little more bold.
No, I'm not even counting the first one. That's guaranteed. Yeah. So, any thoughts on that running back?
Anthony knows his Buffalo Bills running backs, right? We all know how high he was on Zach Moss.
Oh wait.
So absolutely. That's not what happened. I do think Buffalo takes a running back. I would not be surprised at all if they took Bryce Hall here. I don't think they should. I think they should try to maneuver themselves in around the second round or even with their own second round pick and take Kenneth Walker, who they say is great running back, not as great pass catching running back. Use Devin Singletary for that. So I think they need a little bit of help in the back end on their defense, and that's where they go. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's Hall at what is it, pick 25 at all.
All right. Last team, back-to-back picks, 29 and 30. The Chiefs. Wide receiver is a huge need for them. They lost Tyreek Hill wanted big money, and he, it's funny. He alluded to this a year ago, right? He's like, I don't talk contract until it's about up. When they were wanting to think about extending him last year, so he wanted big money, and he got it. So the Chiefs right now are rocking with Juju Smith-Schuster as their number one wide receiver, right? Would you agree that's their best? So I'm thinking
probably,
yeah, and he might do well there, but
if we don't count Kyle Pitts as a wide receiver, then we can't.
Right.
Kelsey like
right.
one.
We
pass catcher.
Yeah.
Juju's probably the number one wide receiver.
Yeah, right. Whoever goes there is nobody's passing Travis Kelce as the best option when it comes to the pass game. So a wide receiver getting drafted, I think Juju's best suited as the team's second best wide receiver. Again, so whoever gets in there does it immediately is probably not drawing number one coverage. They're put in a good situation. Any player that gets drafted by the Chiefs gets hyped up like crazy. Clyde Edwards-Helaire for no reason, but touchdown upside is going to immediately be there. So, Sully, do you see the Chiefs drafting a wide receiver, and what does it do to their value?
I think they absolutely take a wide receiver here. I think with what's going to be left to them on the board, I think Christian Watson makes the most sense. The guy's got great hands, good route runner, and he can fly, and they like speed in that offense. So I think he's a good guy that would fit in that offense. I don't know. They're another team that could probably take two wide receivers. I don't think they will, but they could. I don't think Mecole Hardman is the answer there. And then after that, I think it's Josh Gordon is their next best wide receiver on their roster. So they absolutely have to take a wide receiver with one of their two picks, if not both. So question, though, real quickly is if Green Bay takes a wide receiver, say they both get one of the top five, who's 101, who's 102?
Yeah.
The Green Bay receiver or the Kansas City receiver?
For me, it's Green Bay. I think there's just more receivers in Kansas City that it has to compete with, even in a good spot.
I have a good counterpoint for this. So, Leanna, you seem to love to look way in the future when it comes to dynasty. Like, is Aaron Rodgers going to be there for 5 years? Because it seems like you like to look 5-6 years in the future, where Pat Mahomes is going to be there for 5 or 6 years. Is Aaron Rodgers like that person could only have like that high value for 2 years, right? So does that change? That doesn't change anything for you? I mean, obviously, when you're
I do look ahead
first,
do look ahead, but I can't tie value like that to just one quarterback in an offense. If it is Olave or if it is, Williams or any of these guys, if they're good, even with a bad quarterback, they're still going to be really good.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, I do look ahead. Yeah, Rodgers may not be the quarterback, but that's mostly my opinion of Rodgers' value, not so much all the other players in his offense or not.
So let's say, who's your number one wide receiver, like in the draft?
In this draft?
Yeah.
I've been going back and forth between London and Wilson and Burks, but I had Burks number one the last time we did this. I'm going to stick with Burks now for the argument.
Okay, let's say your number one goes to Green Bay, and your number one goes to Kansas City, and then your number 3 goes to Green Bay. Does that number 3 still jump your number 1?
I don't know. That's a really good question.
It's just I just think it's
a really good question. Yeah, it is a really good question. I would probably keep my number 1 as my number 1, but at the same time, these guys are so closely ranked as it is. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to answer that.
What about you, Sully? Does it change for you? Let's say, are your number 1 and 3 like really far apart, or are they kind of close?
My top 5 are all clustered together. I have Williams at 1, London 2, Wilson 3, Olave 4, Burks at 5. But you could put them all in a blender. Yeah. They could come out, and I wouldn't argue with any of the order they come out in. Right.
So would it change, like if you had your number 1, like Wilson go to Kansas City for some reason, and then near London go to Green Bay? Does Jameson Williams still stay your number 1?
Probably. I think whoever the Kansas City pick is has the best chance to jump up for me. I just look at the Green Bay situation as, and they're rumored to be trading for Darren Waller. If that happens, that changes the scenario as well. Yeah. I don't know why the hell the Raiders would do that, but whatever.
Yeah, it's been debunked, I think, already. Derek Carr said no way.
Carr said no way. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think so. If I'm playing Green Bay, don't I just double the hell out of the rookie and take him out of the offense? As good as Aaron Rodgers is, that's gonna be my job as a defensive coordinator, and I'll let Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb try to beat me. So I don't think he can do that as much in Kansas City because I think Juju will be involved. I think that as low as I'm not the biggest McCole Hardman guy in the world, he can play. They have some running back options. Rojo could help move the ball on the ground, and CEH could become the pass catching back that we think he's always supposed to have been. So I just think the weapons in Kansas City are better. Now, if Green Bay picks 2, maybe that changes my mind. But I think for right now, if one of those 5 guys lands in both locations, I'll have the KC guy probably 1 spot higher than the Green Bay guy. They'll both be 1-2 though for me, without a doubt.
Yeah, it could go down to a situation where I think if you want immediate production, like and you're like a top, you're a playoff team in your fantasy league, the Green Bay guy jumps the Kansas City guy because I think the path for volume is there. I think even if he gets doubled, Rodgers will find a way to get his best player the ball. So
probably.
And I think it's more likely that they take one of the not top 5 guys. Kansas City does, or even Green Bay, like Jahan Dotson. Pickens wouldn't surprise me. Like, and those guys that are falling to the second round of super flex drafts jump into the first. So that's
I think Pickens makes a lot of sense for the Chiefs. I think that's a really good call.
I do too. Like if he was healthy in college, I think he'd be clustered in that number 1, that top 5 guys. I think it'd be top 6.
And he'll move into the first round of all of our drafts, Superflex 100%. Or not, if that happened.
He'll be in the 10. I think he'll be in the 107 to 112 range of those drafts. Yeah,
I think you guys are 100% right, and I think he's the biggest, most likely to bust of all of these wide receivers. I see Denzel Mims when I watch him, and I see a guy that makes circus catches because I don't think he's really in position that he should be in and tracking the ball effectively. So I don't think he gets away with that at the NFL level. He's had some rough go with injuries for sure. So if he was healthy, maybe. But
Chiefs are in a good spot to take that gamble, though. I mean, whether that pick hits or not, they're going to be still really good, and they have 2 picks right back to back to take a chance. So
yeah, and they're not going to take 2 receivers. So neither one of these teams are. So you got to hit, and you look historically back to like 2010. 20% of first-round wide receivers are hits. Like, that's pretty low.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really crappy wide receivers that have been taken in the first round, all positions, really. So, fantasy managers aren't the only ones that make mistakes in their drafts. NFL teams do it all the time.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see.
Absolutely.
It's going to be tough. It's a really, really hard draft.
Yeah, and that pretty much sums it up for us. I was going through, didn't look like we have any questions. Thanks. Aiden Bailey was always in the chat, saying some stuff. He's talking about the Chargers guys here. Yeah, Allen is old, so that's a good to mention. And Williams is injured. They could draft wide receiver to kind of take over because Allen's got to be on his way out here soon, I would assume. Debo to New England. Don't have the cap space for that. I can tell you that right now. But other than that, we didn't have any questions. Only just one here from your buddy Craig Sully.
Yeah, Craig's the man. Hey, how awesome is his paranormal freaking show?
I haven't got to listen to it yet, but it is so funny.
Oh, it's cool.
The introduction video was so funny. I was laughing.
with
JJ Arcega-Whiteside. That was brutal.
Craig's one of the funniest guys I know, and he's incredibly intelligent. And I did watch that. I didn't get to watch it when it was on, but I watched it afterwards. Yeah. It was awesome, and I highly recommend you watching it because Craig is great. But his guest was awesome, and the story was freaking creepy. I'll
have to listen
check it out.
I work in the mornings now, so I'll have to check it out. But that's going to do it for us, everyone. We went over, but we always do. So thanks for tuning in, and keep updated on the Facebook change for the time change. I know we're going to be moving to 8 p.m. On these Tuesdays. I believe we're staying on Tuesdays. We might move to Wednesdays, so stay tuned on that Facebook page, and thanks for watching today. As always, thank you, Leonie, for being on here every week, and then Sully, thanks for jumping in this week while our fearless leader is on vacation. Thank you.
So much fun, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw it or not, but Melvin Gordon went back to Denver.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
See you guys next week.
See ya.